ever since the inclusion of a supplementary character in the second Sonic the Hedgehog title, the series has never just been about the eponymous blue hedgehog. Whether it's bees, crocodiles, girls, robots, dolls, aliens, human princesses, or even the physical manifestation of a planet's life force, well, there really is something for everyone. Yet, to many, this lack of focus is often cited as a reason for Sonic's decrease in relevance over the years, with his own playability taking a hit to accommodate gimmicks that don't fit the template of what a Sonic game should be. Though, Sonic is at his best when the series experiments with new ideas, transforming the template to create something that's more palatable to more tastes. And on the timeline of the Sonic franchise, there was a very obvious point where creativity was let to run wild. Sonic Adventure is something of an anomaly for the series at large. While it undeniably wrote the book on Sonic's 3D gameplay in the years going forward, many of its elements and cast members would see a diminished role in future games, including its own direct sequel. And it's a shame, because going back to this landmark title was a reminder that where Sonic has struggled to completely stick the landing in 3D, members of the Sonic Adventure cast had done so with top marks. So, I'm GAMESD, and in this essay, I'm going to explain why the rest of the cast got things right, and why Sonic Adventure is not just a Sonic Adventure. If you were to ask people with a passing familiarity who they consider the most valued players of the Sonic the Hedgehog games, they'd probably point to the core trio of Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. Perhaps the best defined of the cast, composed of the pointy protagonist with attitude, the two-tailed fox that appeals to the younger demographic, and the red one. The three characters managed to neatly establish themselves in the original Mega Drive games, especially Sonic 3 and Knuckles. These characters aren't just interesting because of their designs or role in each game's plot, but because their skill set is unique, while still staying within the familiarity of the Sonic control scheme. The main man himself is built for speed and momentum, and so spin dashes and revs are designed to get the character up to speed. Tails, on the other hand, is designed more in mind for a more relaxed playstyle, replacing Sonic's deliberate jumps with floaty hops that can be expanded into long hovers to bypass bottomless pits and perils along the ground plane. Knuckles' gameplay instead contrasts Sonic's speed by putting more of a focus on deliberate exploration and traversal, these large, labyrinthian levels you would usually barrel through. So it's fortunate then that, for this first fully fledged 3D outing for the series, this approach to separate gameplay types wasn't just carried over to Sonic Adventure, but expanded further by becoming the main structure of this game and adding additional characters with their own unique gameplay hooks. Sonic Adventure is split up into 6 separate campaigns, told from the point of view of 6 individual characters, that run in parallel and even cross over with one another to tell a larger story. It's a rather big concept for a game aimed at a younger, lean general audience, especially when it comes to piecing together where certain stories begin and where on the timeline events take place. I haven't really got anything to say about the story or the characterizations, even if a focus on active storytelling told through cutscenes and voice acting was a main priority. The mechanics are where things are more interesting, and in spite of 6 individual campaigns, Adventure's gameplay can be boiled down to 4 distinct types, 3 of which are the standout. So, let's take a look at them one by one, starting with... So the absolute one thing a new Sonic game should guarantee is that Sonic himself feels not only good to control, but congruous with his previous titles. The first one is certainly up for debate, as is the second. A common complaint used to discount the 3D titles is that the sense of weight and momentum of the original games is yet to be carried over, neither is the more layered level design. Sonic Adventure certainly set the precedent for this by adopting a more straightforward level design and standardised control scheme for the main character. There's rarely divergence from the main path, and the game never asks you to perform a spin dash or build up speed to overcome an obstacle. Is this a bad thing? In the case of Sonic Adventure, I don't think so. The levels never feel like they need the original Sonic's sense of weight, and the character controls don't ask for the particular platforming or obstacles that made the Mega Drive games. But an aspect of the original game's level design that was brought forward was the spectacle. The aesthetics, quirks and ideas that stick in the mind. Whether it's the rolling green hills, the blue and yellow automation of the chemical plant, or the glitz, glamour and chaotic bumpers of the casino night zone. It's in Sonic Adventure that they've doubled down on this aspect. The transformation from a marble maze to a playable roller coaster has taken place, and the latter games are all the better for it. Example, look at the game's first level, Emerald Coast. A resort and islands floating in crystal blue waters that transition from man-made platforms to natural loop-de-loops and ramps as you move into the level. But the Ice Cap Zone, a smaller, more vertical level that asks you to work your way up the inside of a mountain by shimmying around stalactites and following perilous pathways, that ends in a rousing, rock and roll driven snowboarding section down a cliff face. Even the casino makes a return, and in a divergence from the straightforward design of Sonic sections and even most Sonic games, instead throws you a different objective to complete. Gather 400 rings to reach an emerald. How you do so is up to you, with 2 fully fledged pinball tables, an underground section, and slot machines to start building up a cache of cash. It's telling too that the level is mostly devoid of enemies to keep both your rings and goal attainable. These levels aren't challenging in the way that the original games would pit you against waves of enemies or unknown obstacles. It's a little more thoughtful of how you move forward, keen to keep you surprised with what's around the corner without losing sight of this more focused objective. But what about the controls? 360-degree movement is incorporated for the first time in the series, and where it helped expand Mario's moveset in Super Mario 64 and set the standard for movement in the third dimension going forward, Sonic struggles to make it work a lot of the time. It's its high rate of acceleration, where pushing the stick beyond the smallest threshold sends Sonic into a sprint that can throw off playability, so it's fortunate that the developers built the game to compensate. Paths are designed to be wide enough to roam, and lanes aligned with guardrails to stop potential falls. Automated sections where boost pads lock you to a certain lane or direction also do a lot to mitigate mistakes, even if it does feel a little like ball wrap, where tighter controls could have sufficed. Outside of speed, Sonic's additional moveset fares a lot better. Jumping in 3D has always been something of a challenge for developers to overcome, especially when it comes to lining up the player character with an enemy or platform without discernible depth perception. Sonic Team's solution for this was the homing attack. With a quick airborne tap of the jump button, the Hedgehog homes and pings off the nearest enemy or obstacle. Later levels even use this mechanic to build bridges across bottomless pits made of enemies. Something that feels fun to pull off, if once again feels indicative of the game taking immediate control from the player to avoid mistakes. Why the inclusion of Tails and Amy to this section then? Outside of some small mechanical differences, their levels follow the same straight ahead structure that Sonic's levels do, and in the case of Tails, levels are almost lifted directly from the original campaign. In his case, there's more of a focus on racing, where the goal is not only to complete a level, but also to do so ahead of the computer-controlled competitor. His flight makes a return from the original titles, but is only really put to use to reach speed boosts and skip platforming. Fitting of this time-sensitive mode, but a little shallow considering what the moveset could have achieved. Amy on the other hand is given an offensive hammer that feels a bit better than the standard combat option, and can be changed with runs to attain higher jumps. The gameplay follows something of a light survival horror vibe, with a persistent, indestructible enemy that will pursue you through levels, as well as light puzzle solving necessary to open the way. Future Sonic titles have stuck nearly completely to this type of linear, full-speed focused gameplay, streaming platforming and puzzle sections to something a little more straightforward. It's hard to blame the games for doing so, it is, after all, on brand with the character. But here's the thing. So here he is, rougher than the rest of them, the best of them, tougher than leather. They call him Knuckles, and unlike Sonic, he doesn't chuckle, he would rather flex his muscles. With that prerequisite information out of the way, where Sonic has struggled to make the transformation into a competent 3D platformer character, Knuckles did so wonderfully. Whereas exploration-based gameplay was only roughly hinted at in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, it has arrived fully formed in Sonic Adventure, and the game is improved for it. Knuckles' gameplay eschews the linear-driven pathways of Sonic's level design, and instead gives you small open worlds to explore. These are 3D spaces used to maximum effect, asking you to travel not just back and forth, left and right, but high and low as well. Why? Unlike the single objective of reaching the end of a level, Knuckles instead asks you to collect 3 pieces of a Master Emerald, and these can be hidden in a number of spots in the level, be it under an obstacle, in an enemy, or hidden on a high ledge or under the soft soil. A hot and cold tracker for emerald shards pulls off quite the balancing act too, pointing you in the right direction without directly spelling out the location of these items in a way a map or cutscene would. Finally, where Sonic's top speed is a little unwieldy, and his main mode of engagement is safe homing attack, Knuckles' take on the moveset feels a little better established for a game of this type, a little slower, with a jump that can be extended into a slow glide to better line up platforms, and a boxer's punch for a direct forward attack. Best of all, he has a wall climb that not only feels pretty good to use, but makes you as quick on vertical surfaces as you are on horizontal ones. If you didn't know any better, you'd think that he was a character designed from the ground up to make the most of this new 3D open platformer game like Sonic Adventure. But he's only a small segment of the package. One that includes looking into the making of this game, I discovered that this character came about from the overwhelming fan feedback to Sonic Scene to include a character with a gun in the Sonic franchise. I've always found this fact a little funny, especially knowing how that idea developed later down the line, but we see it in its earliest prototype here. So you would think that the shooting would work in the mode of a standard third-person shooter at the time, controlled like a tanking platformer character, with gunning a matter of just lining up to shoot. But where Gamma differs is in how this interaction has been abstracted to an arcade mechanic. Instead, holding the shoot button starts a trace that you can move to draw over the targets. Releasing the button causes micro-missiles to destroy each target one by one. Destroying multiple targets at once doesn't just increase the score, but adds seconds to the clock. Seeing as this is the only mode of the game that follows a tick-down time attack mode instead of the standard Sonic time trial. The idea feels like it has roots in a Sega prototype somewhere, and I wouldn't be surprised if it provided some inspiration for Res, developed by some of the same team members a few years later. The levels themselves then transform the standard Sonic linear path into something more akin to a shooting gallery. One part Virtua Cop, another Daytona USA, where the quicker and bigger the kills keeps your score and timer in good health. There's a few reasons why I think these 3 gameplay types are the strongest of Sonic Adventure's design. They show the scope of what can be achieved with nearly the same control scheme and assets when a few variables have been applied. A blistering run through an active volcano can now become a mountaintop treasure hunt, or the trip through the guts of a factory can be the stage of a training gallery to test your weapons. They can also show what happens when a little flavour is added to the standard Sonic interface. Even within his own campaign, asides like downhill snowboarding, collecting rings to reach a goal, or even hovercrafting breaks up the usual flow of gameplay without really breaking its core design. Knuckles is what happens when your main Sonic objective is split into 3 with no direct route to each. and Gamma shows what happens when Sonic introduces a timer type mode, where hitting enemies isn't just to clear a path, but also to beat the clock. And I think Sonic's team agreed, because these 3 gameplay types were the only ones carried over to its direct sequel, Sonic Adventure 2. Before wrapping up then, I think it's worth talking about the 4th gameplay type, and maybe not as well regarded character in this game. There's one thing that you can say about Sega, is that they're a developer who retain their arcade spirit. Games like Yakuza massively blend Virtua Fighter's beat motor controls with Shenmue's open world adventure, while Super Monkey Ball felt like it was destined for a bright and colourful arcade machine with a crazy controller. And Big the Cat is perhaps the best stealth demo for Sega bass fishing built into the interface of a cutesy platforming game. This is fishing abstracted to brilliantly simple arcade gameplay, with easy controls that are hard to master, backed up with the most bombastic fishing music ever pressed to a video game. Did the character really need to have a platforming element back up? Probably not. The delight puzzle solving in Ice Cap and Hot Shelter do at least add a little character to what would otherwise be a pretty chilled out fishing minigame. So the state of the Sonic franchise isn't as dire as many would make it out to be, though I would argue that the newest games aren't as interesting as Sonic Adventure. Sure, the 6 campaigns could have been condensed to just one whole Sonic the Hedgehog only game. They could have taken the time to fix the control scheme or made the levels more like the ones in the original games. But a linear focus on a character that people already had preconceptions for would have wrote the developers the chance to expand apart with ideas that could be contextualized as other characters. Sonic speed is a tricky thing to get right in 3D, but Knuckles' exploration and Gamma's shooting sections work wonderfully. Even the time where Sonic ditched straight ahead objectives for collecting rings in a casino actually justified the move to a 3D space. Sonic Team and Sega needed a game like Sonic Adventure to figure out what the future of the franchise looked like. And while they certainly took some lessons on board, I think a few of them have been left behind a little too long. Though, if there's one thing that could be lobbied against every campaign, it's that not one feels like a fully realised product. Knuckles and Gamma's gameplay is a little half-baked, while Sonic's levels aren't all they could be. If any of these were given a chance to be their own games, fully fleshed out with compatible ideas, such as turning Knuckles sections into Banjo-Kazooie levels with wild objectives gatekeeping your emerald shards, or giving Gamma something of a fully fledged Time Crisis game with full character control, I think they could be as good, if not better, than the game that they originated from. Even a fully fledged Big the Cat fishing RPG isn't the worst idea in the world. Because, after all, Sonic's Adventures shouldn't just be Sonic's Adventures. Hello! Thank you for watching and listening. If you want to support the channel or receive notifications of new videos, remember to press the subscribe button. If you want updates on future videos or want to know a bit more about me, follow me on Twitter. And if you'd like to leave any feedback, please leave a comment below. I try and respond to anything you post. And that's all for now. Talk to you soon.